Hello, this is Gary Geraths. In this episode, we learn the techniques and methods of quickly drawing women and girls with colored pencils and graphite pencils. Learning these various techniques have allowed me over the years to draw more confidently out in public. Use these techniques at the O.J. Simpson trial. Turns out I would have to draw over 100 people a day. It was a steep learning curve. I've also had the pleasure of wandering around various film sets and drawing the cast and crew. And applying these techniques helped me tremendously while drawing the guides in the rapids of the Colorado River. Most importantly, though, the information in this video can help you just gain the confidence to go out anywhere and draw good, solid portraits. Here's your selection of colored pencils. All the way on the left-hand side from the polychromes, the sharper ones, much more of a sort of surgical line. The ones in the middle are watercolor pencils, and there's my erasers on the right, and then on the far right are the China markers that go just about over everything. One important thing with these demos is that I'll be using photographs as my reference. Now, this is about drawing in public and not using photographs, but I thought it would be a good way that you'll be able to grab the idea and the techniques without the model's heads moving around. So as you can see, one of the first important things in this is 3 different points. First of all, I'll use that ball as a solid base to pull the vertical axis for where the features are going to be. That's generally from like the top of the eyes down to the top of the chin. It gives me a width from the width of the ball, height from the top of the ball down to the chin. Next is I get the general shape of the face. In fact, I try to get as close as possible. You see this model has much more of a triangular face rather than a rounded face. So I make sure that I make that part of my initial design. You can also see I'm using the hair to kind of block in the upper part of it and then play that off of the shape of the face. So see how blocky the hair is. It's more angular. The face, you can see I'm coming in with more rounded strokes. Softens it up a little bit. But perhaps you can also see that I put in the horizontal axis line for the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and then just put little teeny tiny dots of where the proportions of those are. Just I call it bracketing, right? And then fill in the nose. You can go the fulcrum there, general shape of the mouth. And so what I'm doing now is sort of fleshing out the features a little bit more. Not nailing them in, just getting them sort of knocked in there a little bit. So normally when I draw these, I don't put in all the extraneous sort of lines in it. There's not a lot of linear breakdown. I have to sort of edit quite a bit when I'm doing this. I have to be a little bit more certain, eyeball this stuff a little bit more. Eyeball means that you don't have the luxury of picking a pencil up and measuring things. If you do that, then your viewers are going to see you're definitely drawing them. So what you're doing is you're looking at it holistically. You're looking at the entire drawing and making comparisons about shapes, about breaking down those shapes and making comparisons between the two. You can see this what I'm doing in the hair right now as I'm going from general overall planes and I'll soften the face up a little bit more. Not resting on any certain form or any certain feature. Now at this point it's definitely an advantage to know what the anatomy is. So you know where the sockets are, where the bony parts of the face are. Bony parts are going to leave you with a slightly heavier, sharper, planar angles on things. Tells you how their proportions are set up, how wide the eyes should be, like where the bridge of the nose locks in to the top of the eyebrows. At this point, I'm coming down into those nicely thin, curving cheeks, just firming things up before I go into the next step. Remember, for the most part, she's not going to be sitting still like this in one place, letting you just draw her. If you're out in public, she'll be moving and talking and using different expressions. So as she moves, one of the things that's important, that's what these blue lines are. These are the lines I use to sort of lock everything in, these positions, these little points in space that as she moves, I do things like connect the corner of the lips in with the corner of the eyes or the corner in the nose and see those angles and how they kind of return to the same positions. That's one thing you learn when you draw in public is people return to their same angles a lot of times. Another important point is learn the shapes of the eyes and the lips and the nose and practice that. Different kinds. And so when you get out in public, as it shifts and changes, you'll be able to make that work with your drawing. Also remember the features change proportion as they move farther away. So you can see in her eyes, the eye that's going back in space is smaller and has a different kind of angle than the one looking straight at us. Same with the lips. Lips curve around the corners. You don't want to flatten them out and make them symmetrical, especially if you have your 3/4 view like this. Now at this point I'm using the red pencil to come back to those first element steps. You can see the ball, that front axis line. There I'm bracketing the features a little bit, reinforcing the shape of the face. You can see it's broken down into like 3 different easy elements. You have the shape of the head, shape of the hair, and the shape of the neck to keep it together. So at this point I start to lay in the tone. I'm using sort of a half tone at first just to get the rhythm of it. Even though their hair is super black, number 1, it's a photograph. Number 2, that I'm not ready to commit that hard yet. I'm using the hair as sort of a practice area. Now going in, finding those dark areas underneath the planes, away from the light. Sort of establishing a rhythm. Now I'd do the same thing if I was out there in the public drawing this stuff. I would not come in and render this out. I'd look at the rhythm of what I was putting together. Make sure that it makes a nice composition, that everything accents one another. So now that I've got good rhythm built up, now I'm going to come in and sort of knock in the features a little bit more. I'm a little bit more confident. Figure I got a good sort of nice setup design where everything's kind of working, and I'm going to start to articulate some of the accents of the face that I like a little bit more and block the hair in. You can see I've sped up the film, but then as I'm doing this, I'm not even drawing the hair in as totally black. I just want to make sure there's light on the top of it. Now this is a demo drawing, so you can see those red lines and the other lines underneath it, so it's making it a little bit more stark. You'd be a lot more edited if you were out in public. Now it's really important that you organize your thoughts as you go through the initial designs, the first parts of this. What you're doing is you're making your eye go up and down and over the face, looking at what brings the character of the model out. For me, it's those really cool little accents, those little curls that go over the top of her forehead, the shape of the eyes, maybe even the fullness of the lips, kind of organized wildness in the hair that I'm going back into. So I'm not just randomly drawing stuff. I'm making sure that that design stays solid. Now an important point to keep in mind with these demos is that I'm trying to keep them as fresh as possible, not overdone, not finished. And so what I'm doing now is just bringing the pencil over the top and showing you some of the important aspects that I look for, the compositional points. So for this drawing, I picked a completely different model. A lot more angular. You can still see again that ball shape, but I'm going very much into a very plainer, broke down, especially using the hair on this to help define the direction and the attitude that I want to put in the drawing. Now some of that has to do just with the angle, and some up above her, so the hair is going to be a little bit more prominent. But you can see in it, I'm not worried about it being hair. We know it's hair already. And one of the big points in this is that though the model is older, I have to make sure that I don't overdo it with the wrinkles. And one thing you'll see with this demo is that I put a lot of lines into it as the process, and then I'm going to have to go back in and do a separate drawing of it all by itself a little bit later on. So you can see that there's a zygomatic arch. I'm building that up. I'm using a lot more anatomy because the flesh is a lot more sagged and doesn't have the strength that the last model had. So again, make sure that your design doesn't go out of control. There's a lot of skin and a lot of curves in this, but you have to make sure that it holds together. What I'm doing with the blue again is showing you that sort of base part that when I draw a model, I make sure that you can see it's a little bit more three-quarter view, and so I'm paying attention to the distance between the top of the eye and the nose and the corner of the nose where it hits the tear duct and the outside corner. There they go right there. See those little points? Those little points are important because you can see they line up from the corner of the mouth to the corner of the nose to the corner of the eye where the tear duct is, and they also run vertically, so you can go from the chin to the corner of the mouth, up through the right-hand side of the nose, and then up into the eyes. That's important because as your person moves around, it'll give you reference points you can always go back to. And you can check out the proportions again, and again, and again. Now, similar to the last model, I'm using the red pencil to show you the first primary marks and measurements that I use to sort of set the head in place, and I could put all the features and everything else on top of it. Another point that's important, but you haven't seen it yet, is that I'm making a way to shade this, to put a light on top of it, right? So I'm trying to find the corner of the face, the inside corner, which is the temple, corner of the eye, cheekbones, and then the corner of the chin. Even you can see where the hair changes position right there. I go from the top of the head to the side, on both sides in fact. Then I come back and sort of start to articulate the features a little bit more, build them up. And this is where the age starts to come in, and the personality. Comes the eyes in, lay that in. As you can see, I don't just draw the pupil and the iris, but I draw everything around it, all the way from the forehead down to the tip of the nose, before I go back and commit to the actual pupil and iris of the eyeballs. Now let's start to add a little bit more character. So I'm going to add some age, thin lips, a little bit more droop on the bags under the eyes, certainly into the cheekbones a little bit more, readjust a little. You can see I'm adding secondary sort of curves now, a little bump on the nose, inside of the socket. There's some more of the wrinkles. Now the important part about this, again, is what I'm doing is I'm sort of wrangling around everything. I'm not committing to one certain point yet. I'm getting close. But if you're drawing out in public, again, to me, it's about the entire portrait. To me, it's to get the entire character of your subject. Perhaps you do like a feature. Perhaps you do like a section of it, part that you want to sort of use as a focal point in it. It's certainly good if you get a good portrait, a good likeness, but to me, also getting the character and getting the expression, sort of an inner spirit of the person's like really a focal point as well. So to practice what I preach, unfortunately on that last drawing I had done so much mark making on it and so much process on it and so many layers that I lost the spirit of it. I lost the character of the model I was drawing. It ended up, I just hammered it into the ground. And so I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll do another one that I would do just like what I would practice in public. And so I'm going to take that and ground it all down, simplify it, and show you in this time lapse. It's about 10 minutes long in actual time. You can see the shape again, adding, subtracting, simplifying, a lot of simplification on this one. No second guessing. So checking out the size of the nose, how far it goes down. You can see the cheekbones come into it, the eyes come into it a lot quicker. Make the nose a little bit bigger. You can see I am taking everything that was in that last drawing, reshuffling it around. This is what you're going to do when you go out and draw in public, is that it's not going to be a routine. It's not going to be an absolute process. You're going to be jumping back and forth between problem-solving devices. Speed is of the essence when you do these things. One of the reasons for it is you don't know how long your subject is going to be sitting in front of you. You may be able to tell you, and I'll mention some little strategies later, but you can see that a lot of times I'm doing this as an arc. I'm starting from one part of the head and moving in a circle to the other side. I'm not resting so much on one feature as I want to get everything kind of down in a shorthand version, so then perhaps if I need to go back later and bump some areas up or improve on them, I've got a good base set up. So even here you can see I'm putting the shading down in on top of it. A little bit of age, so I'm going back between line and value and texture and build-up. That's one of the reasons I like using color pencil. It doesn't smear very easily. You can move very quickly, run your hand on top of it. A lot of times it does not really interfere or smudge the drawing. You might make out that one of my last moves in here is to establish a slight sort of disjointed shadow pattern between the neck up through the cheeks, temple, and then into the back of the hair. A good combination of using line for the features, for the age, and shading for the form and the solidity of the model. Here's a good little exercise. Do these short little sketches denoting shape of the head, general features. Try to build up your speed level on these, simplification level. Again, really good for drawing a great distance away. Many times you're going to be drawing people 30, 40 people away, so you're not going to be seeing a lot of detail, but you'll be seeing just the first part of the form. And so you're going to have to be very confident and get it down fairly quickly, and then doing a lot of simplification. So a lot of times I would just make the heads up and bring in the photo reference a little bit later to demonstrate approximately what you're looking at. And you can see on a lot of these drawings the hair actually comes first before the actual face does. Now I'll use that quite a bit. One of the reasons for it is that that becomes a lot of character. The other times it's just enjoyable to do that first. It helps frame the face, gives you the idea that the hair's falling off of her forehead. But again, you can see the positioning of the features is one of the primary aspects of the sketch. Now, in learning how to do this, you're going to have to make a lot of mistakes to see how you put a drawing together, how far you can take a drawing. And this one of this particular woman, I'm chewing up pretty good. I can see that the face isn't quite the right shape, but it's important in the fact that this is the way that you're going to learn this. Ultimately, there's going to be a lot of trial and error, a lot of things that you work on that aren't going to quite work, and don't get dejected over that. This is part of the process. You don't see how far you can push it. Like right now, I can tell that I'm really making the lines too hard on it. Remember, even within the worst drawing, there's probably some good points in it. Sit back and learn how to analyze your successes, and even, if you want to call them, failures. So a lot of times I'll use a photograph as a base and then fool around with them a little bit. Change the cheeks, change the neckline, jawline, chins, length of the nose, hairstyles even. I think it's important not to copy the photograph, not to get stuck in a very slow, meandering process. It's important to learn how to push that pencil across the paper, on its side, on its tip. Learn your line quality, very thin line, broad line. See what the pencil will do. Redefine the shape. You can see I'm completely changing the hairstyle on it to fit my needs. And you can see I finish off with that ball and net axis. Now in this drawing you can see that experimentation I'm talking about. See, in the end run, what I'm doing is that I'm taking those delicate features, and by the time I get done with them, I've just gone a little bit too overboard with them, squared them up, made the line a little bit too hard. Now, that's important because when you're looking at this like gentle, thin, draped skin here, what you're seeing is you're seeing a lot of age on it. There's some very delicate line, and I'm blocking out the eyes right. I'm got the nose sort of laid in there right. The lips are a little bit too wide. Changing the hairstyle. I want to make the hair not so made up and like went to a hairdresser's, but got a little bit more of sort of a hair helmet look to it. But all in all, features are symmetrical. Cheekbones are there. Everything's in the right place. It's just overdone. So this woman has a much more rounder face. Features are rounder. Everything is hardly a sharp angle in her entire face. So I'm keeping that in mind as I block it out. Same thing goes with the hat. So see, I lay in the ball on the axis first. Going for the lips, those rounded cheeks. Kind of a little bit, as we're looking up underneath her neck, there's a little bit more of sort of a double chin there. And then I come back in, set up that side plane for the head. Get the ears in there, and then I'm going to put the hat over the top of it. Not just glue it on, but put it up over the top and around the other side. Same with the brim. When you're drawing babies and toddlers, you have to be very careful in the fact that the features aren't really anchored into the head yet. The skull hasn't really formed out. And so the way I put them together, at least this one is that you have these two large circles or balls that kind of overlap one another. And then there's a lot of editing about where the features are. So I just make suggestions most of the time with more rounded, softer edges. You have to edit a tremendous lot. The more lines you put in a baby's face, the more it ages it. It'll go from 6 months to 2-3 years very quickly if you overdo your drawing. Now when I go out drawing, frankly, this is the way that I'll start the evening. I'll usually do a really simple profile view. Number one, you can rest assured your subject will not be looking at you. It'll be probably concentrated on the person sitting across the table from them. And also the angle sights are real simple. No foreshortening, or at least not much. No two sides to draw. You just make sure that everything's very simple. This is also a good time to use the process for drawing the hair. You can see I'm going through and going from the forehead to the temple and looking at the distance between where the edge of the hair is and where the eyes are, where the ear is, and the jawline, and then coming over the top and then filling the hair in, and then even using the hair as sort of a frame to bring more of the facial features out. Now here's a good time to compare and contrast the 8 different heads that I did. Look at the shapes, look at where the features are located, and even the line quality I use. Remember, most of these drawings are only 2 minutes long in real time. At this point, I'm going to sit out and just sort of freestyle 3 different heads. Now if you do this and you use photographic reference, again, just use it as a guide. Again, use it as reference. Don't worry about copying it. Learn to draw quickly, confidently. Get the shape down. Get the direction that it is. Again, you can see the ball using the front axis line for the eyes. And then get everything organized. Learn to move quickly and smoothly through the drawing process. Don't become a slave to the photograph. Remember, in drawing in public, you're going to have to move very, very surely and confidently through your subjects. Perhaps you can see in this drawing what I'm doing is I'm using, again, those 3 sort of basic shapes. I've got box for the head, square rectangle for the head. Box for the hair, I'm sort of tilting it off to the side, and then a triangle for the neck. So one thing I'm not trying to do is make it symmetrical. Right? I'm trying to make your eye move through these different shapes so it becomes a lot more enjoyable and a lot more intriguing to look through. Now in making these heads up, one of the things I'm doing is that I'm just experimenting on them and see what works. I'm overemphasizing some areas, squaring some other areas out more than they probably should be, and then even moving into the different hairstyles in case I happen to get frustrated on one area, I can move over to another figure. I'll remind you again that this is probably my favorite viewpoint to start at when I'm out in public drawing myself is a profile view. And again, I'm going a little bit backwards on this. Instead of establishing the ball and the front axis a lot, I actually draw the hair in because it helps frame the face. And you can see this horizontal axis lines that go back from, say, the bottom of the nose and the eyes back to the ears, back to the back of the head. Again, help me get organized. What you can see is there's a whole bunch of vertical ones that go from the tear ducts down to the mouth, corner of the nose, up to the eyebrows. You can see I'm filling those in a little bit, simplifying the heck out of them. Again, one thing I must admit is that a lot of times my drawings look a little bit more crunchy because as I'm doing the demos, I'm not trying to sweeten them up or soften them up a lot. I'm trying to replicate what I do out in the field as I'm actually drawing out in the public. And a lot of that's quick decisions, and frankly I've got a pretty active hand here, and I'm leaving a lot of information out because I'm getting ready to put the shading in it. So one thing you might see is before I go in and commit to real darks, what I do is I'll make a light to mid-tone value pass to get the rhythm of everything. You actually get the sort of visual flow through the face before I go in and commit to like really super solid edges on things. The other important point that you're going to have to really remember this is it's not just drawing the portrait, the hair and the skin and the features, is you have to become pretty adept at drawing different textures of clothing too. And that's what I would recommend researching out, not only different quick sketch portrait artists that you like, but also fashion illustrators. Frankly, learning the textures and the folds of the outfits complement your portraits as well. Now in these next couple of drawings, I'm going to bring everything together, including the hands. Your subject's holding a phone. Frequently you're going to be doing this. Obviously out in public, if you're at a restaurant, they're going to be eating, holding forks, looking at the news on their phone, contacting people on Instagram or whatever. This is done in the subway. You see this quite a bit. So this is going to be the head, the outfit, the hands, the phone. And you might see that I changed the stuff around a little bit. I brought the hand and the phone closer to the face, so it helps the composition. There's lots of hand demos out there on YouTube. This is done very simple. It's almost, you can see I'm not even concentrating really drawing on the fingers, but just getting the whole composition down first. And then moving my eye back and forth to see what makes most sense. Not forgetting the portrait. In fact, you can see I'm putting a lot more focus on the upper part, the hair, than I am on the features. Because again, I'm going to simplify them out a lot. Now, one thing you'll see with this person in the subway here is that she's got very big, sort of flamboyant eyelashes, and what I do is I just get rid of those and draw the eyes instead. Because if I try to draw those eyelashes, they just will not look believable, and I'd rather have her eyeballs down, her pupils and iris actually looking at something. So I'll just fake those in, even with some lower lids on there. It just gives the eye a direction. It looks like she's looking down at her phone. And the little accents there, nothing too heavy duty. Getting the contrast of the shadows from her neck up into her chin helps frame her face a bit more. I'm really intrigued by her hair, so I'm going to make that more of a focal point. Notice I changed it too, so I give the hair little flips on both sides. So I'm definitely putting together more of a narrative here. I'm telling more of a story of this woman standing in the subways, looking at her phone, like we see quite a bit. And here comes the shading in, right? So now I'm going to use the shading, sort of the soft side of the pencil, to get a little bit more of the texture of that scarf that's around her neck. And now bring the phone up, making sure the eyes come in contact with the phone, and even the upper finger has contact with the phone. It's the most important part. As we get to the end of it, remember, All this stuff's measured. So I'm looking at the proportion of her hand against her face. Even though I'm changing things, I'm still making sure it holds together as a whole composition first. Doing a lot of suggestion on it. In the last few pencil moves here, you can see I'm sort of reinforcing the overlapping of the hand over the scarf over the top of the face, hitting the corners of it, again making it a whole narrative. Again, in this drawing, it's going to be completed at the end of the demo. It's going to be using the same techniques that we've used before, but I'll bring this one to an end and show you exactly how I got there. All right, so you can see the ball in the socket, and that wonderful big set of hair on her I'm going to use to frame this. And again, you can perhaps see that I'm already moving the hands, and what she's doing, she's applying lipstick and using mirror that she's got in her hand sideways. So I've already moved the hand farther away from the face to make sure that it's not overlapping too much, that they're not coming in contact with any tangents, that each has its own character. Just hitting the shape. You notice what I'm doing with the hands is I'm not trying to draw fingers. I'm just trying to draw the whole thing as a composition. Get the hands in there just enough where I know where everything is, and then probably move on to the neck, establish the neck and the shoulders. But see, it's always for me is like, again, to me this person's doing a thing and actually moving. So I'm not treating it like I'm drawing off the photograph. I'm trying to treat it like if I was actually standing there and drawing this person. Getting the pertinent information down. You'll see how I use the measurements a little bit later on, because remember, like I said, I'm eyeballing this. Changing the expression on the face, bringing the eyes up a little bit more. Even moving the hands around a little bit. So a lot of this is abbreviated because, again, this model is moving, shifting back and forth. If I'm on the subway, it's rolling, rocking and rolling back and forth. So I got all these different elements that are sort of conspiring against me, but it helps me in relationship to seeing really what I have to simplify, what I really have to visually get done, and what I can leave out of the composition. The important part is not to get intimidated by the process. You'll learn how to simplify, and there's a lot of suggestion in this. So perhaps in the way of suggestion, you can see how far along I really am in this already. And I'm using those axis lines now, so connecting the eyes with the mirror. You can see I'm going vertically with this. So this is all the stuff I would say is that eyeballing thing, where you're not explicitly putting it down on the page, because again, you want to keep your face fresh and empty, rather than clog it up with a bunch of line. There's those curving, big, rounded forms that I'm kind of basing that almost kind of half spherical set of hair on top of her, lining up the hands with the chin, with the mouth. There's the forehead, front axis line. You can see the cheeks coming in. So it is a little bit on the mathematical side, but that's very important to come back to if things start to go awry. So I used a soft kneaded eraser and got rid of most of the blue lines. I'm coming back in with a terracotta colored pencil. Now that's a warm colored pencil, and I'll be coming over with dark lines over the top of that later, but not at this point. I want to show you the softer rhythm of laying in a big shadow pattern on top of a figure. Now this will make a lot more sense later, because in the future I'll be doing some demos on ink and on color using color pencil and chalk. But for right now, you can see what I'm doing is that I'm moving that pencil around, looking for contrast, looking for similarities. You see when I draw that side of her afro, there's not a lot of high contrast between the hair on the cheek, yet there's getting to be more high contrast between the hair on the other side of the forehead. See the lost and found edges. So again, I'm building up more of a composition at first. There's my halftones and some accents, even suggestions of the color of her skin. I'm keeping that light. The light's coming from above, so the lights are on the top, shadows underneath. Then on the last pass, I'm going to go on and draw the denser, darker areas that I see. Getting ready to put the black over the top of it. So now I'm starting to use different black colored pencils to go over the top of that warm reddish terracotta color. Not obliterated. If you can see, I'm being very careful about the density levels that I'm putting the black over the top, because I want that terracotta, that warmth, to shine through the darkness. It's almost like an underpainting. Give it a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of the skin coloration, that warm glow. I definitely want to make an impact with it, but I'm not beating the tar out of the drawing at the same time. And for the texture, you can see the way I'm using the pencil, a lot more sort of staccato, then using line, building the contrast up against the silhouette of her forehead. Remember, if you're drawing out in public, you're going to have to draw in different kind of weather and different kind of lighting conditions. Sometimes you'll be outside and it'll just be blazing hot, and you'll have really high contrast on your figures, or it'll be almost black and white. Other times you'll be drawing in very low-lit bars and restaurants where it's going to be very hard to see your subject. And so a lot of times you're going to have to realize how to best replicate or invent those lighting situations. And just like lighting, situation with your subject may change too. That's why you learn how to sort of read the room, see whether they've got food in front of them or their food hasn't come yet, or you're never quite certain how long you're going to have to draw. So by learning how to do these quick drawing exercises, you'll be ready for any changes necessary. Remember, the more you practice this, the more you're going to learn. The more you learn, the more surprised you'll be at your confidence level that when you go out. And by all means, go out and do this. It's fun. So thank you very much for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again. Bye.